Yeah. Heaven touched my mouth with a fire and made my heart pure. Now my heart pours for everything, from the gang violence in Chicago to genocide in Darfur to miscarried children. Blood pours on the porch floor. Mama in the...
Let's talk about going into 2023.
Yeah.
Starting a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
What are some things that people should be considering if they want to start a podcast going into 2023?
Yeah. I think first thing they've got to figure out if they really want to do it, right? Because consistency, I kind of made this mistake early on. I launched my podcast and then I launched my golf one and a car one straight away, and I didn't have the consistency. And I made the mistake with the car one of having a co-host, and just having to try and get two of you together was painful, right? So, and then the other on the golf side of things, it was four of us, and trying to get four people together was a nightmare. So they just slowly kind of phased out.
Yeah.
So I would say the main thing is, if it's going to be you and a friend, or you and a co-host, or just you and a guest, it's easier to just have you and guests because they're just easier to schedule guests, right? Unless you can nail down, say, hey, me and my co-host and me and my friend, we're going to do a podcast. We're going to record every Sunday night, post on a Monday. You have to stick to that schedule. So consistency is number one, the most important thing you can think of. Don't worry about technology. Don't worry about cameras and equipment and stuff. You can download Anchor.fm, the app, right? You can record from your phone and post from your phone. It's the easiest way to start. But I would start there. Start with using your phone. Be consistent. Figure out what days you're going to record on, and then what days you're going to upload on. And then prepare for that episode, right? What's your topic? What are you going to talk about? Figure out what you're passionate about. I love golf and cars, so I have a podcast about golf and I have one about cars. If you love reading, if you're in a book club, if you're a big Life Church fan, you're a big Craig Rochelle fan, and you just want to listen to his sermons or his chats on a Sunday and then break them down Sunday night and post them on a Monday, like whatever it is, just figure it out, write it down, get it clear, and go deep dive into that topic. And I think you probably found this too, is it benefits you the more niche your subject is, right? Because there's a million golf podcasts out, there's a million talk shows out there, or sports or whatever. But if you're like, I'm going to talk about the first Harry Potter book for a year, we'll go page by page and really dive into it, then there's going to be an audience for that. So I would, consistency, it all comes back to is just really figuring out, what day am I recording, what day am I uploading.
Gotcha. What's the second one?
Second one I have is being able to get to people, right? Being able to connect with like-minded people, or people who are successful, and people who are business owners. And we all get, you as a pastor in the business of taking people to coffee, right? Let's go to lunch, let's go to coffee, which is nice. But these people who have run companies, they're high six-figure earners, or they've sold books, they're successful at whatever industry they're in, they don't have time to go for a coffee or a lunch. But everyone likes to talk about themselves. So if you want to invite people on your podcast, and look, they're not going to say yes straight away. I send DMs to people every day and I don't get responses. These people have played. There's a guy I'm trying to get on the podcast right now. He grew up in Del City, Midwest City area. He played for the Phillies in the World Series this year.
Okay.
I want to have him on the podcast, right? Just send him a DM this morning. Hey, dude, just chat. Are you back in time for Christmas? And we'll see. Like I had, do you know who Ben Rector is, the musician?
Yeah.
So I DM'd with Ben a couple of times because his tour was coming. He's from Tulsa. His tour was coming to Oklahoma City. Hey, if you're in town, he's a big golfer as well. If you want to play golf, I'd love to play golf. But if not, let's record. And he just doesn't have time for it. All right, let's figure it out when your tour is done. So just keep following up. So the good thing is that by reaching out to these people, they want to talk to you. They want to be on your podcast, right? They want to talk about themselves. They want to market something, especially if it's like Ben, he's a musician. He's got a tour coming up. He's got to do something about it.
Yeah.
And the good thing is as well is no one really knows how well your podcast does.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You could have 10 downloads a month. But if you put it out there that this is the podcast,
yes.
No one asks you. Have you ever been asked by a guest how many? No, nobody asks you, right? But if you've taken the time to ask them and invite them to come tell their story, game changer.
Yeah.
I interviewed David Griffin recently, who that one hasn't gone out yet, but he owns HEADY.MEDIA, who just moved into the new building downtown. Yeah. They own News 9, News 6 in Tulsa. I mean, a massive, someone I look up to in the media industry, right? Like, this guy has done it. He's 2 media stations. He's just donated the old one to Langston.
Yeah.
This guy doesn't have time to sit with me for a coffee, but he gave me an hour of his time to be on a podcast and tell me how he started. So I interviewed Larry Nichols the other day as well. Larry Nichols, him and his dad started Devon Energy. So, you're talking to the guy who built the Devon Tower. Why did you build the Devon Tower? And his response cracked me up because he said it was cheaper to build one big one than it was to build 2. 2 average size. Yeah. And it's well, no brainer. Oh, yeah, of course. So you just build this man. He's, anyway. So, yeah, that's the second thing is you can get close and be able to build friendships with people who are very successful and have done things that you want to look up to, right? And that doesn't, for me, it's people in the state who have made an impact, but it doesn't have to always be that. And then depending on your genre, I have a friend of mine who has a podcast about cartoons and music, and it's called Tunes and Tunes, as in cartoons and tunes, right?
Yeah.
Harold. When I did the podcast with him, I walked into his studio and he's like, give me 5 minutes, I'm just finishing up. He's talking to some guy who's designed Hey Arnold, the kids cartoon, right? That everyone so it's just, and podcast is just, I think, the easiest way to meet people that you look up to, for sure. Yeah. So that'd be the second thing.
That's legit.
Connecting with people.
What's the third thing?
Third thing I have is I think it gives you something to do. It's a hobby, right? It's a hobby that really brings you value because it's made me a better communicator, right? It's now a hobby that's made me money, which is great. But I think there's a lot of people who aren't into athletics, so they don't like sport very much. My wife, for example, right? My wife goes to work. She doesn't like sports. She likes our golden doodles. She comes home from work, cuddles with the dogs, right? And likes, like most other women, she likes crime TV shows. So if she were to start a podcast, it would probably be about her love of crime TV and dogs.
Yeah.
Right? It's so easy to, and people want to chat and talk about like-minded stuff with other people, right? So it would be so easy for her to build a community. But also this.
Have you tried to get her to do that?
I'm slowly getting there. Yeah. I did tell her the other day. I said, you need to find yourself something to do. You need to find a hobby, right? And it wasn't hey, you need to find a hobby because you're boring. It was hey, you need to find a hobby because I want you to not have. I don't want the biggest thing, back to what you asked earlier, between Wales and the USA is when you live in Wales, you have so many more days off a year. Generally, just your company was you have this many days, and it's almost double basically what you get here as a base. We get a week here when you start a company, right? It's at least 2 or 3 weeks back home.
Yeah.
And maternity leave and all that stuff. So they work a lot less back home. So I told her, I was you need to figure out, figure something out that you just want to do. Gives you passion to do something, right? And I'm not, she's I'm not creative. Well, it doesn't matter. You love the dogs and you love, crime TV shows. You don't. You're good. Yeah. You're good, right? Yeah. So I think, having the third thing obviously is you're having a hobby, but that hobby serves you in so many ways because it's made me such a better communicator. I have better conversations with my family. I have better conversations with my friends. I can carry a conversation now when I meet somebody who I don't, when you get in the elevator and everyone's just kind of looking at the wall, right?
Yeah.
I will start a conversation. Yeah. Just because I know I can. Yeah. And I went on a trip with some buddies this summer. We're in an elevator. We're in Vegas because we're on a bachelor party. And it was funny because it was not the typical bachelor party that goes to Vegas. It was a bunch of 30 plus dudes who went to the pool and literally just hung out all day. It was not what most of the wives would be oh my gosh, you're going to Vegas. Yeah. Total opposite. But we were in the elevator and the guy on has a Lakers hat. And I was hey, what do you think of Westbrook this year? Just trying to, and my buddy's just how that was so easy for you. Yeah. Well, yeah, because he's gonna just say, oh yeah, I mean and this was in the summer, so they were they weren't hating on him at that point. It seems now they don't like him. But yeah, we had a little conversation. Great, have a good day. See you later. And as he gets
Yeah.
out the elevator, it's made it so much easier to talk to people.
Oh, that's so true.
So that's one thing that comes back.
When you're thinking about it, gives you something to do. It makes a great hobby, and it can lead to something even more. Right. And I love the way that you talk about your wife could potentially take a podcast and do it around dogs or do it around crime series or whatever the case may be. And there's a lot of people just kind of sitting around doing nothing. But going back to how easy it is to start one, just grabbing your phone and using Anchor, it made me think about, I'm teaching a podcast class here. I did one, and one of the things that I let them do was listen to my first podcast, which was over the phone using Anchor, and I still use Anchor now. And it was just really cool to be able to, and most of the people in the room think of this, like kind of where we're sitting at
full
now.
Setup,
full
thing.
setup. It's no, really. And I was like, that I think that podcast, if not, is in the top 5. My most played podcast, and it was just on the phone. So this stuff doesn't matter. So what's cool though is you can take something that you love to do and be able to have conversations around it with people, and you never know where that can go. So you got 3 things. We talked about being consistent, deciding on a day, deciding on when you're going to record, deciding on a day that you're going to upload. 2, being able to connect with people. It's important, but you can use the podcast to be able to connect with people that you typically wouldn't have access to. Right. And then the third thing, again, going back to this, it's a great hobby. It gives you something to do. You can use it to build a community around things that you love. And then you said you had a 4th thing. What would the 4th thing be?
So the 4th thing, it's, you just mentioned it there. It's community, right? The 4th thing is, it's just the community now that I have, and like the connections that I now have after doing 4 years of podcasting. Like when I came here in the States, I was known as Mike who played golf, right? Mike's the golfer. Mike plays golf. He's here to play golf. People now in Oklahoma City are like, oh, Mike does the podcast. They have no idea I played college golf. And then when they find out, they're like surprised. Like, are you any good? I was like, oh, and I'm kind of like, yeah, I was pretty good. Like, I hate saying that, but I don't want to be like, no, I was okay. When they Google you and they're like, oh, you won conference championship, whatever it is. So I say, I kind of like, and they're like, well, do you break par? I'm like, well, for the most part, yes. Like I generally shoot around, even, whatever. But back to like, everyone knows me as the guy from the podcast, right? So if somebody needs something, they usually ask me, hey, do you know this person? Who do you know that I need to connect with, right? The good thing about us doing podcasts, we like trade people, right? Like, who have you had on the podcast that I need to know, kind of thing, which is great. And we have other friends who do podcasts, so we do the same thing. With. So the community here around podcasting, around meeting interesting people, and once, it's very referral based, right? So if I give you someone's email who I've interviewed and I say, hey, and I make the introduction, because they've met me and they trust me, they're going to trust you, right? And that's how I get a lot of my podcast guests, right? It's either DMs on Instagram or it's referrals through friends. And the community is just the greatest thing ever. And I know people bash on about community and it's a buzzword and whatever, but it's true.
It's true. Yeah, I was about to say,
people talk about it because it's true. It works, and it's just, forget the podcast, forget everything I've done with it. The friendships I now have, best thing ever, right? The people I now meet, I can go out to dinner and go see someone, and because I've spent an hour of them, I've given them an hour to express themselves and tell their story. They're so kind of thankful and appreciating of that. And you sit with someone, which is rare now in today's world, which is another byproduct of doing a podcast, is we're in a room. There's no one else here. It's just me and you. Right? We're not on our phones. We're not like texting anyone else or going on Instagram while someone's having a conversation. It's just us in a conversation. That's rare. So the fact that we get to build a deeper relationship with each other by doing this and then put that out into the wider community, not only helps everybody else. So community is just,
that's amazing, really crazy to think about.
It's because of all the people that I've met because of you, right? And all the people you've met because I've referred you someone. Like it's great. And that you think of the people that I interviewed Jared, who owns Coda, right? CrossFit. Like, and then that world opens up, and we know a lot of the same people because he's a huge golfer.
Yeah.
You're just connecting the dots, and then you look back and like this community is literally like one step away from everyone knowing each other. It's not 6 degrees, it's 1 or 2 maybe.
Yeah.
So yeah, communities. So
good. And that's like my mission as far as just building the brand Heady Media.
Yeah.
And our mission is just to build the community around podcasting.
Yeah.
And we have different communities that we try to build under one network. And so, and it's because I see the value in community.
Yeah.
Like what you're talking about in the sense of like us being able to connect people to people, us connecting people to each other, and how we're able to now maybe walk in a room and it's just because of that podcast. People are like, were you able to do that? I'd be like, I interviewed him on my podcast.
How'd you know that person now he's on the podcast?
He's on the podcast.
No-brainer.
Yeah. I gave him an opportunity to share his story, which it's amazing regardless of how influential you think somebody is. Just giving them the opportunity to share their story and to maybe reach even more people, even if it's one person.
Yeah.
Because I always tell, like, what if that one person is the president of the United States, or that one person is Larry Nichols, who now, because of you, met somebody and was able to invest in something, or it's those crazy things like that I think what makes what we do and get the opportunity to do really fun.
First time we met was Creative Mornings.
Yeah. Yeah,
right? Which is coming back. Well, it is back.
It is back. No, that's not to say. It's not just coming back. It's back.
Are you going to speak for that? You should speak once.
No.
I know you greet, but that's your thing, but you need to speak.
Yeah. No, that's what the people, like, no, I'm just going to greet.
I saw Krista the other day. She's like, I want to have you come speak. I was like, I'd love to. It'd be great.
Yeah.
Like, just tell me when.
Because she's helping part of it.
Yeah.
They reached out to me. I was like, that was my first time, like, probably saying no. And
really?
I wanted to say yes so bad. But I was like, I just can't do it. I wouldn't be able to give him my
because David spoke, I think, at the last one.
Yeah, David skipped one.
I missed that one. I was out of town.
Yeah, so that was really cool. Well, man, thank you so much. I just know that there's a lot of people who are really wanting to scratch that itch of starting a podcast, and they're sitting in the sidelines. And man, these are some great reasons why a person should in 2023 go ahead and make that decision to go ahead and start their podcast. And as you and I can attest to, it really adds value to not only your life but other people's lives. And man, what better thing to do than to add value, right? And so how can people find you? Where should they look you up at?
At This Is Oklahoma on pretty much every platform. And then if you want to watch golf reels and me and my dogs, my personal Instagram is just Mike Hearne _ and my last name's Hearne. So Mike Hearne _ So yeah. Simple, but mostly at This Is Oklahoma to see beautiful Oklahoma stuff. But if you really want to watch me play golf and play with my dogs and drive cars, then Mike Hearne's the other one.
Mike Hearne. Ladies and gentlemen, hey, thank you again for hitting that play button for another episode of the Heady Coleman Podcast. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, go